Here with Sean Salai from the Washington Times. He's covering some crazy stuff that's going on California college campuses. That's a lot of C's. Sean, tell me about this censoring case that's going on. It sounds like their college tried to censor anti-communist literature or flyers or something at a college campus. What's going on?
Yeah, it's at Clovis Community College in Fresno, California. And last November, there were three students who had some flyers from Young America's Foundation, and they belong to the Young Americans for Freedom chapter at the school. So the flyers were basically associating communist regimes in China, North Korea, other countries, Vietnam, with, quote, the blind arrogance of the left. And they had gotten approval to put these flyers up on campus. And the school president sent them an email last November saying basically, well, these flyers, you're not advertising a specific event, so you need to take them down because they're violating our campus policy on posting materials that are, quote, offensive or inappropriate. And so the students said, well, there's no policy that says they have to advertise a particular event, and we don't know what inappropriate and offensive is. And she also told them in the email that they couldn't post flyers about abortion. And so gradually the school decided you're allowed to put them in a free speech kiosk and kind of exile the flyers to a remote part of campus where nobody would see them.
Mm-hmm.
So the students ended up filing a lawsuit earlier this year. It was actually on August 11th. And that was done through the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, which is a nonpartisan free speech advocacy group based in Philadelphia, founded by Alan Charles Kors. And that group provided the attorneys. Young America's Foundation was involved. And just this past Friday, a U.S. District Judge, Jennifer Thurston, who was appointed by President Biden last December, struck down the school's policy.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And she basically, So
she
basically said, oh, sorry. Go.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, she said in her ruling, she granted a preliminary injunction that really there's no reasonable way to understand the boundaries of this prohibition, that this is constitutionally overbroad. It violates the students' First Amendment rights. And because Clovis is a public campus, then they are subject to the First Amendment.
Sure.
So,
yeah, I mean, makes sense to me there. That just definitely sounds like a very vague policy to have where it's, any kind of flyer that probably a more liberal-leaning college campus, anything they don't like, they're going to take off there. But I was just kind of curious, were you able to find out who kind of designed that policy? Was this something that, the students had input on, or was this just kind of a faculty thing? I don't know if that's out there. Can you tell me anything about that?
Well, the original policy was something that was not clear. And so the students accused the school of inventing rules to censor conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even a line in the president's email to them that says, if you need a reason, then it's because it doesn't advertise a club event, with the phrase, if you need a reason, suggesting she was just basically saying, we don't like what you're doing, and so you can't say it.
Yeah.
And the point of the FIRE, which was the nonpartisan group, is that you can't just tell students, oh, we don't like what you're saying, you don't have a right to say it. But that's pretty blatantly a violation of free expression. Now, the attorney for the college talked to me on the phone the other day, and he says they've already redesigned the policy to be more specific so that they can't get in this trouble again. So they're trying to cooperate with the judge's order here.
Interesting. So more specific in what way?
Well, he didn't really say, and the policy hasn't been publicized yet, but basically specifying what exactly inappropriate is. There are legal precedents for this. If something is involving profanity or ad hominem attacks or defamation, something is blatantly offensive in an objective way. Now, in this case, these flyers were simply expressing an opinion.
Yeah.
A political opinion, and simply saying we don't like communism and associating it with liberal policies.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a pretty interesting hill to die on, something so commonly held as that in the United States, that you can't even say that on a college campus, especially a California college campus. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that they went so far to, get these things all removed when it's like you really don't have any, precedent for this.
Yeah, and the college actually thought that they could win this lawsuit, so they
Mm-hmm.
believed that there was some legal precedent. And honestly, if you look at what's been happening on college campuses over the past year, there's a lot of schools who have thought that. Speech
Mm-hmm.
First is another kind of pro free speech advocacy group, and they've been filing lawsuits against universities throughout the country on behalf of conservative students. And they won cases in the University of Central Florida and the University of Houston this past year, where these schools have set up these overly broad speech codes and they have these bias reporting teams. And the bias reporting teams are set up with administrators or officials who basically collect reports from students on faculty or other students who are saying things that are offensive to them. And so sometimes the speech codes include phrases like microaggressions. If you use a microaggression, that you are violating the speech code. And the universities defended these codes by saying, well, they're not punitive. We just want to have a conversation with the students about their behavior and what they're writing on social media. And of course, the response of the First Amendment attorneys is that, well, that's protected speech. And what you're doing is you're chilling free speech. And a
Yep.
phrase that's often used even in the judge's ruling this past Friday is that when you do things like this, you're basically intimidating students into being quiet,
Mm-hmm.
telling them that they don't have a right to express their opinion on immigration or abortion or communism, even,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
one
The
wouldn't
next
be
thing.
that controversial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're talking about those looking for biases, but do you think, what are the implications for free speech kind of in general going forward from this now that the judge has tossed this for the California school? Do you think this is going to be better for free speech in general, or do you think that some campuses might just double down on it and try to repress speech even more?
Well, a lot of campuses have doubled down on it. And at the Washington Times, we've tracked a number of these reports, but hundreds of schools now have bias reporting teams.
Mm-hmm.
And each of these things have to be fought out at the different state levels and different federal courts and different lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often, the conservative students are winning the lawsuits, but not always.
Sure.
And so it's something that could end up at the Supreme Court eventually, where you have kind of a limit case. But for the most part, it's really a question of, the line between your right to express your opinion and when something is objectively offensive. And so the main thrust of these lawsuits is that you can't say something is subjectively offensive, that just basically defined by the person offended that this person has exceeded their limits on free speech.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we define everything subjectively based on, I'm offended that you have this view about communism or this view about uh, tax reform, then
Mm-hmm.
basically nobody has a right to say.
And I could see that being the next thing. Oh, you want tax cuts? That's a microaggression to me, or something like that. Um, but I think it's interesting just the fact that even a Biden appointee threw this out. I mean, that's got to say something that colleges are losing these cases in court. I mean, how long is it going to be that colleges are going to want to have to start paying legal fees over these kind of things? Eventually, it's like, are we here to actually educate people or to push a political agenda that's actually starting to cost us money? Do you think there could be a change there?
Yeah, I think so. There's been some push for damages in some of these cases, settlements. And when it's happening with a Biden appointed judge, it's not just a partisan issue. The judge in Orlando who ruled in favor of speech first was a Reagan appointee.
Mm.
But really, it's something that when you look at the speech codes on the face of it, you say, well, this is really unfair. Like, how could anybody have an opinion on anything? And suddenly, this very vague policy could be invoked against them, without them understanding
Mm.
what the limits or the rules of discourse are here.
Yeah,
And,
certainly.
and so, yeah.
Mm. Well, Sean, thanks for coming on. Interesting. Seems like it's a good win for free speech, and we'll have to have you on again soon.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Sean.